Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. Today I have the pleasure to speak with Miten, who I've known for almost 20 years through his and Deva's music. Miten shares the traumas he's experienced throughout his life and how he's found the healing power of music. Miten says,
if there's one thing I would say that's helped me, and that is to sing. And as much as I can, I tell people, not just our community who are into singing anyway, but church choirs, and find a choir, find a gospel choir, sing. Because when you're singing, your heart starts to lift, your burden lifts, your spirit lifts, and it's not a joke, it's real, and it's important, and it's a commitment.
The mantras hold a special place in my heart and my personal healing, so I can highly recommend checking out their music on their website, Spotify, or wherever you listen to music. About this week's guest. Miten was born in London and grew up in the 60s. He later went on to establish a successful career for himself in the 70s as a noted singer-songwriter, releasing several albums, including one for Ariola Records, under the guidance of legendary American producer Bones Howe. He toured extensively, opening for Fleetwood Mac, Randy Newman, Oates, Lou Reed, Cooder, Fairport Convention, and the Kinks, among others. This period of his life was exciting but left him spiritually unfulfilled. After reading a book of the discourses on Zen from Osho, No Water, No Moon, Miten had an epiphany and began an inner search. He left everything he had known before, even selling his guitars, and traveled to India, embracing a life as a member of the community that had gathered around Osho. It was there he met his life partner Deva, and they are now renowned worldwide for their fusion of Western music with Sanskrit mantras. Together they have presented their music in as many as 45 countries, while accumulating accolades from such diverse admirers as Jer and the Dalai Lama, with album sales in the excess of 1 million copies. Make sure to check out their website and to listen to their mantras wherever you get your music. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. Well, it's so nice to see you here today, Miten. Thank you so much for taking the time for this conversation today. How are you today?
How am I? You were just telling me something really interestingly, and it's escaped my mind. What were you saying?
Well, before we started recording or now?
Yeah, just before we started
I actually
recording.
said I was actually looking forward to speak to you, and then we said let's record that. And if I had to ask myself why, I don't know. It's just a sense that I had. I mean, I get, I invite these people on the podcast that I get a sense would be good to speak to, but I don't know what's going to unfold. And because this is like a conversation that we're having without any script or anything pre-recorded or pre-thought about. And that's what I think is interesting.
Yeah, well, we have a context, we have context because, when you reached out, I know your work is with trauma and the healing of the trauma, and having some traumatic experiences myself and finding ways to heal that trauma has happened to me a few times. And so in different ways, physical trauma, psychological, so that's why I wanted to. That's why I said I'll come and talk about it, and then it started me thinking. I was just going to go there back to the start, and I remember I've had very clear, not anymore, but when I was a younger child, I remember the birth canal. And I remember the push, and I remember the circular. It was all circular. It was traumatic feeling. I had no explanation for it. I used to lay in bed at night and wonder what this is, what these big balls were coming at me, or I was in there. That's the first trauma, that's one we don't escape straight away. How can you not be traumatized by the birth?
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually
There's
true.
no way. it wasn't until many years later I realized, oh, that was the birth canal. That's what I was. That's what that was. And then you go through the trauma of childhood, just being rejected or being misunderstood, being not believed. And feeling lonely and alone and isolated. I honestly feel like somehow my life has been shaped in a certain way by unseen force that I can only call God. Without realizing what was happening to me when I was isolated in the schools, and my parents moved a lot, so I would be taken from one school to another in England, and then we go somewhere else, and I go to another school, which was a really traumatic thing. As I look back, I was scared to say I didn't understand the maths lessons, or I was scared to put my hand up. And but my father was sort of a semi-professional, frustrated footballer. And he really wanted one of his kids to be the footballer, you know. And my brother was 7 years older than me. He is good. He was into sport. He was into boxing and football. And me, I was just into football, and I was good at it. So whenever I got to another school, all I had to do was to bring a football along with me or a ball and play in the playground. And sure enough, I'd have friends. Yeah. And I started much later again to realize the power of that healing, because first of all, the football is circular. It's planetary shaped. It is for a start, you know. And what I learned when I look back in those years of playing football, what it taught me to go for a goal in life. It taught me to share, because if you have the ball, you can't play on your own. You have to give, and you have to then be prepared to receive. And these things were going in on a deeper level, football. And it taught me to lose. I learned how to lose. I learned that to get up and get going again. And these things went into me as a kid, and the intuitive side of life where you somehow know where the ball is going to be coming, and you position yourself in a certain way to receive the blessing of that ball. And it's you can be technical and you can have all the answers, like you were saying to me, or you can read all the books, you can read all the technicalities, but until you experience it, till you get your hands in the soil and your feet in the soil, and you get the experience, it's very hard to express those kind of healing things, because I had no idea I was being here. I was just playing football. One thing that I can say, because of the competitiveness, and it's necessary in sport, because without that sense of competition, you don't have a sense of reaching for your goal, of persevering and not giving up, and sharing with your friends and being available for your friends, picking them up. So all that was in my early years. And so being isolated and being lonely, it was a good thing for me. It helped me a lot in later years. I learned that I could go down into the city park on my own with my football, and I'd dress up because I was a footballer. That's what I was at 9 years old, or 10 years old, or 11 years old. That went on until I was about 15. The world changed at 15, back then in 1960s, the Beatles appeared in England. The Rolling Stones came out of the woodwork, and who wanted to be a soccer player when you could get it, And so my mother was a singer, because we moved a lot, because we ran pubs in England. That's what they did. So they were good at it. So my mother would, there were no jukeboxes back then. This is in the 50s. And my mother would be the one sitting at the piano, the guys all around her with the beer and the cigarettes and everybody singing. And my mother would be, and I'd be the little guy sitting at her feet, like with tears coming down because everything was so smoky. I can still remember, and sitting there just watching all this energy and this happiness, this lifting of the burden for a minute, and that's what music does. And so that's what the blues is. The blues, if you listen to the blues, the lyrics of blues, they're really, really sad. They're really intense. They're really saying some terrible things about their existence. But you know what? When you sing them, you feel good. Isn't that amazing? My father just was like, no, you're going to be a footballer. You stay at your football, and I would start growing my hair long, and he wouldn't let me have the car till I got my hair cut. We had a little struggle. And then that Christmas, they called me into their bedroom, and they said, look under the bed. It's so sweet. I can still remember this. And there was my first guitar, and that was my father in his unconditional love, really letting go of his dream. Live your dreams and let them go, like the All Is Welcome Here song. And my mother told me, when he heard you on the radio, he had a tear. And my father was a tough guy in a way. So it was beautiful. And so, this sense of music. I remember in the ashram, whenever because when I came to the ashram, I needed time to adjust to a new life. So I didn't play any music. I wasn't.
So I know the story how you came to the ashram, but that was after a loss or after a big change in your life. Do you want to add that in?
Oh, there was a huge change. There was a huge change. And I was living a dream in my previous life. I was playing to thousands of people, and I was called in England what they called guys like me a special guest on the concert tours. So I would go out with these big bands, and I would play for 40 minutes before they came on, and I was the support act. And so I played to thousands of people, all waiting for the big, if you talk about trauma, you want to go to, the concert hall in Paris and come out with your guitar and face 2,000 Parisians who don't want you to
actually
be
just
there.
Want the main act.
That's intense. That kind of thing really is intense. But you know what? Because of the football, I had this courage. I had the strength to go for the goal. And I had the perseverance. They didn't get me, It was another one of those, especially Paris. You can get a feeling when you play for a few thousand people in a city, in rock and roll terms. You get a feeling for the vibe of the nationality somehow. Like the German people, for instance, they're very passive. I can remember me, they sit and they absorb and they take it all in. I mean, like the Dutch people, they're more noisy. And if you get to Paris and London, but Paris was really, really intense. So since we've been going back there with the mantras many, many years later, I have big healing energy and words, just so that thing goes, The thing with going to the ashram, there's always, if you ask any sannyasin or any, not just sannyasin, but any devotee of a guru, you will get an amazing story. And I have an amazing story. Everyone does. It's just too ridiculous to fall in love with in such in profound way that you never felt before, and it's a love that transcends family, kids, parents, all those lovers, all those are physical, connected to the physical. The teacher's not connected to the physical. In my case, I never was closer to him than, I was never in touching distance. So I needed to heal from a really intense time. I'd been married for 7 years with a really, really, and 11 years as friends. We were living in London. I was working as a musician. She was working in the record business. We had a really good friendship, and we had a child. We had a boy, Sam, and my life turned around. By the time he was 3 years old, I'd left the family, and that's not like me. And it was not understandable to many people, but something pulled me out of that relationship. I never let go of my son's connection. I stayed with him all the way through my life. He's 46 now, but I was his best man when he got married. He wanted me to be his best man, and they called one of their sons after me. We healed everything. It was a very intense time, but we're the best of friends, and also with his mother. I just saw her now. I was just in England with the family. We had a beautiful time together. But back then, to walk out of that, I had no experience of life, really. I didn't know what I was doing as a man. And I say man in the way of honoring masculine energy. I just couldn't stay in the house. I didn't know what to do. My rock and roll career was, in a way, it was coming to a peak. I just played at Wembley with Fleetwood Mac, and I'd just been signed to Elton John's record label and things like that. But my life was falling apart. And somebody gave me a book, and it was a book by Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. And my friend, she'd just come back from India, and she came back wearing orange clothes. And I've just been to see the Bhagwan, man. It was amazing. You've got to go, like this. And she bought some books, and she left the books with me. And there was one book, I've told this story many times, so I don't know whether to go into it very deeply, but since you asked, I might as well tell you the whole story. The book was called No Water, No Moon, and it was a collection of discourses transcribed from Osho's talks. And this parable, No Water, No Moon, is very beautiful. And I was reading it. You have to remember, I was in this, very fragile state, but also I was working and living in the rock industry, where it's really intense and really painful and really competitive and dog eat dog, And so I was a very sensitive part of my life involved in that kind of business and that vibe. No Water, No Moon is the story of a Zen nun, and her name is Chiono. And it's a great story. It's a great parable. She's going, it's midnight or it's nighttime. She's been to the well to collect water, and she's got the water. There's a full moon, and she's walking back to the monastery or whatever it is. And she happens to look down, and she sees the reflection of the full moon in the bucket. And exactly at that moment, as she looks, the bucket gave way and broke. And it was like this astounding moment when she realized somehow that she'd been looking at the reflection of reality. And she turned around and saw the full moon. And in that moment, she became enlightened. And that was me and music. I knew there was something, but all I was doing with my music was focusing on the reflection of it. With the financial, the ambition, the power, all that stuff. It was a reflection that kept me connected somehow. I thought that was it, sharing my pain through music and whatever else. When I realized that was me, and they called back then, they used to call Bhagwan the Lord of the Full Moon. And I loved it. And I just realized, if this community exists, I've got nowhere else to go. I have to go. So I left my current girlfriend at the time. I left my wife and my son. I left the record company, the management company, the publishing company, the band. Nobody knew where I'd gone. Nobody, apart from my wife and my mother, so that I could stay in touch with my kid. And I was gone. And when I came to Osho, the last thing I wanted to do was be a musician. I was carrying so much pain. Talk about trauma. So the last thing I wanted to do was carry a guitar around the ashram. I was like, I didn't tell anybody about my previous profession. And I just came into this healing environment, this very intense healing environment where you took the responsibility. There was no guru telling you have to do anything. There was no have tos. Once you were invited into the ashram, there's always a sense of true responsibility. And that helped me also to deal with trauma, taking responsibility for myself.
Can I ask a question there? Because to me, what came to me when you were talking is the leaving behind of all those people, family, but also ideas of what music is and what what the purpose was, and the leaving behind is also always loss. It might be to some degree chosen, to some degree a choiceless choice, but it's still a letting go of something that was very dear to you.
Absolutely. It was huge. For me to walk away from my kid, it was you would know, but for me, he died somewhere in my heart, because I couldn't be his father the way I wanted to be. So I had to let him go and be the father I was going to be, not the father I couldn't be. And so leaving the band was easy compared with leaving my son. It was huge. And the only way I got through it was going into the ashram. That was my journey to the ashram. When I got there and I started to do this meditation that he called dynamic meditation, it was like a light bulb coming on in the darkness, or first of all, a candle, because first of all, it required 100% commitment. And I like that. I know that from football. I know that from playing music. You can't fuck around with those things. There's no bullshit. You either do it or not. And that's how I live life. And that was the way. So, and I like that Rajneesh didn't give anything like, this is a perfect sannyas, and look at this guy, he does dynamic every day. That's what I want from you. Never. It was, there it is. It's up to you how much time you commit to sitting in silence, and how ridiculous it is to sit in silence and not do anything and transcend those kind of feelings and not move for an hour. So those things were very strong for me. And the thing with the dynamic was that it was structured in such a way. It was an hour meditation that you did first thing in the morning. Really, it was very cathartic, very powerful, very, very powerful. You started with really intense breathing. And then there was, in that structure, there was a space for you to be absolutely crazy, absolutely go mad in a safe environment, where it was okay for you to really let it go. Everything, all the sadness, all the guilt. Man, I just spent a year every day with dynamic meditation. I had a lot of healing to do, and a lot of forgiving to do. So, and then there was the music, and I'd never heard music being played and being received with everyone singing, everyone singing. There is so much magnificence near the ocean, and we were all in our 20s and our 30s. It was just a crazy bunch of hippies who had stepped away.
It's interesting that you mentioned there's so much magnificence, because this is the chant that I first remember from how I got to the chanting or the songs. And I remember that specifically because we played that all along in the journey. And that song I remember because we played it right at the ocean. And that really makes me smile, because I can so relate to that. I wasn't 20 then, but a little bit older. But so then singing and dynamic meditation, that really helped you. You said I had so much healing to do, and you also mentioned guilt and forgiveness.
It gave me the possibility to address those kind of emotions. I didn't know. Before I got to Osho, I was looking, because Bob Dylan who was a big part of my life back then, as an inspiration, had become a reborn again Christian. So I thought, well, okay, he's never lied to me. I'll go to church and check it out. I couldn't get out of that church fast enough. There was just nothing in there that was speaking to me. And I had to go to India, and a guru who understood what I was talking about, not only understood, but said, hey, I can help you with this. Here's this thing. It's called meditation. And here's a structure that I made for Western people just like you to help you clean. If you want to call it brainwashing, call it brainwashing. It's going to clean your mind. It's going to wash out your mind. You're going to be clear and clean. And sure enough, it helped me. I had to commit. There's nobody telling me to do it, only my own heart, only my own resource. And after about a year or so, I was ready to I wanted to say thank you to the master through music. I knew I could do it. And there was a guitar, and I just made a song immediately, like falling leaves blowing away, words disappear, and all I can say. And that was my first song, really, as Miten, Miten, he didn't know. I didn't have a friend in the world. He gave me the name Prabhu Miten, friend of God. He didn't know I didn't know anybody in that community.
You went all alone. You were all by yourself.
All by myself, yeah. Nobody holding my hand, only God, who was kicking me up the ass actually and saying, "Get going. This is your chance. This is your time. This is your rebirth." And I realized then that music it's much more than I thought it was. We used to have satsang meditation every week, and it was the first time I'd heard and experienced music that is born out of silence. So you're already healing any trauma. You're already, you're not pushing anything. It's a tantric experience. It's a moment of breathing, a moment of silence, and that's where I learned, like Deva and we never play a concert until the silence until it's all being ready to be received. So I learned things like that, and I learned that it wasn't in any way necessary to thank the musicians by clapping, or it was a joint thing. We were all in it together, and we were all in the journey. And when I was honored to be invited to play that kind of music, I approached it with deep respect because I'd been a musician and I knew the difference. Again, so whenever there was I did go through some really traumatic moments in the ashram, a very intense time, and that's where we learned to hug. Nobody was hugging back then. It was not something we all did. We had to learn how to hold each other, how to breathe with each other, and to feel each other beyond one breath. So we had more than one breath.
And as we now know from the trauma studies that they've done and the polyvagal studies, that connection and actually physical connection actually is healing.
Yeah, well, it was all being born back then. That was Rajneesh creating all this thing that grew into mainstream. But back then, we had to learn how to hug. Those things were mammoth. I can't tell you how much healing. So whenever I was asked, would you like to play in Buddha Hall tonight? Can you play in Buddha Hall tonight? No matter what I was doing or what plans I had or whatever, I would never refuse to play music in the Buddha Hall, because I knew that was my healing. Every time I plugged in that guitar, I could be in tears. One of my girlfriends had left me, or I'd had a fight with my friend, all whatever personal things come up. Because the ashram was very much a microcosm. It wasn't, he didn't want the women over that side and the men over this side. He didn't want the traditional ashram where they never meet, because he said that's where your perversion is. We're going to deal with our basic sexual energy and see if we can transform this energy. Let's work with the energy, not throw it away. Let's work with it. It's Tantra. We were like a huge tantric experiment. All these things for a guy like me was, it was mind blowing. I just dived into this world of deep nourishing and healing my traumas, I guess, or at least my pain. And so I would plug in the guitar and I would start to play and sing, no matter. And then I learned later through psychedelic drugs that whenever I was scared, or I would sing, and the singing would always take away the fear. There couldn't be singing and fear at the same time. I understood that as a law of nature, just like I understood the law of nature when I was a kid playing football. It's a law. You can't be in fear and sing. I know it sounds like, of course, you can be shaky like this and sing, but I don't mean that. I mean to sing, to give praise, There's no fear there. And so if there's one thing I would say that's helped me, and that is to sing. And as much as I can, I tell people, not just our community who are into singing anyway, but church choirs, and find a choir, find a gospel choir, sing. Because when you're singing, your heart starts to lift, your burden lifts, your spirit lifts. And it's not a joke, it's real and it's important and it's a commitment. So that's why we put this music out. And that's what brought me out of the jungle. As I was telling you, when I said to myself, why am I leaving here? This is paradise. And I knew I had to go. And I said to myself, well, if you catch COVID, if you die on this trip, you've got 30 days and 15 concerts. You're going around all through Europe. If you die, then you can say, I did what I came here to do. and that's it, and what better way to go? People singing mantras around you or whatever. And
you always said that. I can remember you always.
That's where my life has led me. I could never have. That singing was a big help in my trauma. And then I'll tell you one more, and then I think I've probably covered everything. But I think the final hurdle in experience in trauma for me was when I had this double heart bypass, and they take everything out, and you can see it on YouTube, actually, not my personal one, but you can actually see the operation. They take the heart and they put it over there, and they keep it pumping mechanically while they work, and so of course, you're not aware of any of this. And I just came to the hospital. They knew what they were going to do. I knew what they were going to do. And they put you under and they take you in. And the doctor says to me, don't worry, man. He said, I do like 2 or 3 of these operations every day. Easy. Don't worry. It's going to be fine. No problem. I'll be gone, and then I wake up with all these things in me and fragile. And 6 days later, I'm on a plane going to my friends in Malibu in California, where I'm gonna convalesce and stay for a few weeks. And after about 6 days, I discovered that I was trembling, and I used to come to this. They had this beautiful sofa. They overlooked the ocean. It was a beautiful house. They had this beautiful white sofa with a lamb's wool, a lamb's skin, which I don't like those kind of things, being a vegan myself. But anyway, it was so beautiful. And I took this little lamb or this sheep, and I covered myself up with it. And I shook and I trembled and I shook and I trembled for hours. And I would do that, and I would do that the next day. I would come back to it. I would cover myself up, and I would go to the very core of who I was to make sure that if there is any trembling or any shock, I wanted it. I wanted it all. And it got so violent, I actually chipped a tooth. But I realized that they could shut out the mind, but they couldn't shut out the body. And,
exactly.
The body was dealing with this trauma, and I allowed it without knowing. So every day I would just go to this incredible, and then be sort of afterwards and be able to sit and absorb the healing energy. And then after around about that time, it was very clear that it felt like this is a rebirth. Something's happening here. I'm between 2 worlds. I'm not what I was, and I'm not strong again yet. And something's happened to me big, And there was one night when I just reached some kind of volcanic place inside of myself, and it all just blew out. And I was all night long screaming and crying and catharting, and Deva was holding the space for me. I just cried and wailed and everything you can think of. And the whole room looked ugly, the pictures, and then it would look beautiful. And it was like real intense. and this release was definitely, I relate it now, I see, to the body releasing this trauma also. The body was actually feeling safe. It was feeling safe. Psychologically, I was feeling safe. Deva was holding the space, and there was nothing holding me back. And so I just kept going to the depths of who I felt I was to find, are there any more tears? Is there anything else going to, and I would go back and there would be something, and then you'd go, and it would just keep pouring out. And towards dawn, I was coming down. Usually with moments like this, I would say, I just need to hear Osho's voice, just to hear his voice. I don't care what he's talking about. So I just need to hear his voice. And then as I was thinking that thought, a voice came to me and said, what about your healing? What about all the people that have written to you and told you that how you and David's music has healed them, how the mantras have healed them and gotten through all kinds of suicidal emotions and childbirth and marriage, all these moments in people's lives that you've touched with your music. Now is the time to heal yourself with your music. I didn't have those thoughts exactly, but it was something like that. So I said to Deva, put on the Gayatri, man. I want to hear the Gayatri. And we lay down on the bed, and there comes Deva and the voice, and it felt like a perfume derived in the room. And we held each other in the debris of the room. And we held each other and drifted off to sleep with the mantra playing. And I woke in the morning to the sun beaming through the window, the light of the Gayatri light, the sun beaming through the window. We were still holding each other. I opened my eyes and I realized, oh, that was the birth. That was the birth. Here I am. From that moment, in about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks after that, I was back on the road and I was in the Amazon rainforest with a group of people, and there was such a process, that trauma process was so strong without me knowing anything about it. I have no experience of the work you do, and how you help people. But I just thought it would be nice to share my journey with what I perceive as trauma, and especially when it's unintellectualized, like it was with the catharsis and with the rebirth. It really felt like I wasn't thinking as a little kid, oh, this is very good for me. I'm learning how to share in life. You see it in 2020, don't you? And then you can help people.
When you mentioned a couple of the key elements of trauma, or of trauma healing, or of integrating trauma back into life. First of all, an operation is always traumatic for the body, as you were saying. Your mind is put to sleep, you're on the anesthetic, but your body is listening and is feeling not pain as you consciously feel it, but it's noticing everything that's happening, and cutting through tissue, muscles, bones leaves a traumatic cellular memory in the body. That's a given. And of course, it's necessary to preserve life. That's clear. But we need to be aware of that to actually then look at that. So any kind of operation is a trauma for the body. And as you were experiencing, the shaking is a way of integrating that trauma on a physical level. That's why, for example, animals, there's this one video that comes to mind of a bear, of a polar bear that is hunted by a plane, and they shoot him with a anesthetic to put a sender, so like a device into him to actually being able to track him. And then afterwards, so basically this is being a chase, right, for the animal. And then he's down on the floor, and then he starts shaking. Yeah. So his physical energy of that movement that has been stopped at one place is getting released. Yeah. And I have another memory. Ananda May, she fell out of the trampoline one day and smashed her face and had some teeth in her mouth. And so I carried her down in the bathroom, washed out her mouth. And then she sat on my lap, and I still remember, and then she started shaking. She said, "Mommy, I'm shaking." Mm. And normally people are being held or tied to something so that they don't shake. But actually it's a good a good thing. So I knew, and I just said to her, well, this is good. This is your body releasing this energy. This was stopped by your fall.
Yeah. I mean, so true. Again, I come back to Osho. We had a meditation there where you shook for 15 minutes. And once I started to meet people out of the ashram and play music and do workshops, I'm like, you guys, I could see how important it is just to shake, Mm-hmm. And so I would always encourage people to take 10, 15 minutes every morning, shake your body, shake off any frustration, shake it out. It's your time to release that stuff. And it's, again, a commitment. If you have to do it. You have to, one thing with Osho is use your body, your body is there, use it. And so shaking, hugging, these things are really important, yeah. And singing, yeah. So
I mean, as you mentioned, the mantras have been so healing for so many people. And the film, was it called Into Silence?
Could be. I don't know. We've got 23 albums now. And they were like our kids. I don't even remember all their names.
No, I was thinking about the film that described the healing aspects of mantras.
Uh-huh.
I think it's called Into Silence.
Called Into Silence.
Yeah. So that one where lots of people describe the healing that they experienced through singing the mantras and listening to your mantras. Yeah, I mean, for myself, I remember singing the mantras as part of a training that I did. So that's how I came to sing the mantras.
Yeah, because they're, the thing with the mantras is that they're not emotional. They're beyond your emotional field. They're not interested in anything like that. They're talking about their healing sounds, scientifically discovered. And so you're dealing with some really strong energy and healing energy. There's no dark mantras, only things like I can't get no satisfaction or something like that. Probably is a dark mantra, I don't know. But the mantras, once you start to step towards them, and it's a funny thing because it's like I see mantras as like the hovering energy phenomenon that are all around. But you have to step towards it to really, it's one thing to sing it, but it's another thing to say, I want to find my mantra. What is that? I want to experiment. And then you start to 21 nights, for instance, 108 cycles every night, and you just commit. You take your mantra, whether it's Ganesh or there's so many mantras for making love. There's mantras for removing energetic blocks from your body and from the field. There's all kinds of different expressions and different sounds. And if you find that one that resonates, it's interesting. Okay, 21 nights. I'm just going to chant with Deva, put the CD on, or however you've got it, and chant with Deva. She's made so many mantras like that now with just her chanting with the tambura. And that's our attempt to share something of what we've learned in our lives with our friends and with people, and it's just an invitation. That's all we have, really. We're not scholars. We've experienced them. I remember Sri Ravi Shankar's father coming to me once, and he was a little indignant, a little let's say he was like, What's your mantra practice? Who's authorized you to chant the Gayatri mantra? And I could feel his sincerity, because to him, you don't just, it looks like all I could say to him was, I've been initiated into the Gayatri mantra. But Deva was born to the sound of the Gayatri mantra, and she introduced me to it. And it's in her blood and it's in her bones. And I've just seen the benefits of the Gayatri, so I don't really need to feel in some ways that I'm cheapening the experience.
To end this today, what would you say is your favorite, two things? What is your personal favorite mantra for yourself? And what would you say is your favorite healing mantra for people who would like to dive into and say, if you go and listen to one mantra, do this?
Gayatri.
Gayatri.
Gayatri, that's no doubt.
Both your favorite, both, and for people to listen to.
It's the mother lode. It's the mothership. You just go there. There's plenty of simplistic. For instance, Deva and I just chant Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om before food. It's just a nice thing. Just close our eyes. Om Shanti, Shanti. That's universal peace. That's what that invokes. And of course, the universal peace we're talking about inside, not something outside. That's a different kind of reality. But inside, we have a possibility for inner peace. We do, but we have to commit. You have to stand up to it, and that's what I'm doing my best to do. And I encourage all of you guys who are listening to this, do the same. Don't hold back.
So
yourself.
Anyone listening, I recommend that you go and check out the links that I'm going to show in the show notes, right in the show notes as well, for you to go and check them out, definitely. And if you're listening to any of the podcasts online, you'll find them all on Spotify or on Deva and Miten's website.
You know what? Deva just did a duet with India Ari. Do you know it?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
That's another. I would say the Gayatri and this White Tower. The White Tower is beautiful. It's also for climate balance and helping us to regain some kind of equilibrium. So it's a good mantra. Please share it with your friends. Go check it out. Play it on repeat.
We'll put that on the link as well.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, and thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed talking about myself.
Well, thank you so much, Miten, for your time and for your authenticity in sharing your life and your stories of trauma and how to deal with them. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nataliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.